What made you choose to be an occupational therapist?
Well, that's a tricky one. To be perfectly honest, when I was thinking about leaving school and doing something, the expectation was that nice young ladies just found a nice husband who would support them forever. So I had to find something to fill in time, right? So I went to the library and I found a leaflet about OT and I thought, oh, that looks quite interesting. But in retrospect, it was actually a great choice because I won't say every minute of being an OT, but most of what I've done as an OT I have loved and has suited me very well.
So being educated in Britain, how is that? And how does it differ?
Well, I'm not sure that the British education makes such a difference. It's the fact that I graduated in 1971 or 72, and at that time OT training was a diploma program. So it was a 3-year diploma at a college rather than a university. Interesting, the same program is now in a university and is a degree program, master's degree program, but it's obviously evolved. But I feel that my diploma training was pretty much the same as a degree level program, in that it was a very intensive 3 years, but it was very much more practical, and in those days we did lots of metalwork and woodwork and all those kinds of things.
So having a 43-year career, can you give us some highlights throughout those 43 years?
Highlights. Well, it's interesting. All the way through my training, the only thing I wanted to do was mental health. And I did it for 1.5 years and hated every minute and haven't touched it since. So since that time, I've pretty much stuck with, until the last 10 years, I've pretty much stuck with assistive technology, high-tech assistive technology, and working with people with disabilities, which I've really enjoyed. And I've worked for a manufacturer, I've worked for the government, I've worked in hospitals, I've worked in the community, which is one of the really nice things about OT. There's such a variety of things that you can do. But one of the highlights that I remember, and I know you've heard this story before and you like it, I was working for a manufacturer, and I had to go and assess a client in Northern Ireland. It was during the Troubles, and we got to Northern Ireland, turned out the person was living in one of the restricted areas. So we had to go in a marked vehicle, and we had to go through the checkpoint where we could see the guns pointing at us through little slits in bomb-proof huts. And we got to the client's house. It was getting dusk by then, so as we carried the equipment in, there were helicopters with searchlights coming up and down the street watching what we were doing, to see that we weren't doing anything illicit. But the nice outcome was the client was just thrilled that we'd gone there, that we made a change in his life. We were giving him environmental controls. And he sent us away, I remember, with a bottle of Irish whiskey and a carton of cigarettes, which wouldn't be allowed these days.
And what about here at CAOT? What's one of the highlights?
One of the highlights? A lot of highlights. I've really enjoyed the advocacy work. We recently got a student doing a placement at Department of National Defence, so that I'm excited about. My second week on the job in professional affairs with CAOT, I had to present to a Senate subcommittee. That was a little bit scary since I didn't know what I was talking about. But they were very gentle with me, so that was an interesting introduction. But there have been lots of advocacy initiatives that I really think the CAOT does a wonderful job trying to advocate for OT in so many different areas of practice. Not thinking of any specific things right now. Certainly in national defence, OT and criminal justice. I think that's an area that's really important and undervalued for OTs at the moment. So we've made some headway with that, and we've got some grant funding to look at OT in halfway houses.
So what would your vision for the profession be in the next 40 years?
In the next 40 years?
The next 40.
Not sure I can think that far ahead. But I do think, I feel very much that the profession will move away from one-on-one treatment of individuals. I think we need to return to our roots a little bit around thinking of occupation in its biggest concept. An occupation to me isn't necessarily founded in healthcare. And while we obviously have a healthcare focus, we also have a social focus, and I think we need to learn to advocate for that approach to health and wellness for people, and to look at populations and groups of people rather than individuals. So I feel that's probably, I hope that's where we're headed.
Perfect.